We'll start with Santiago Calatrava. So Santiago Calatrava Bols, apparently has another name there, was born in 1951. He's a Spanish architect, structural engineer, sculptor, and painter, particularly known for his bridges supported by single leaning pylons, and his railway stations, stadiums, and museums whose sculptural forms often resemble living organisms. Living, but in concrete. Let's not get too attached to the idea they are truly living organisms. They are not. They are made of concrete. His best known works include the Olympic Sports Complex in Athens, the Milwaukee Art Museum, which I saw, the Turning Torso Tower in Malmö, which I saw in Sweden, the World Trade Center Transportation Hub in New York City, which fortunately I didn't see. It's a terrible building. The Auditorio de Tenerife in Santa Cruz, the Margaret Hunt Hill Bridge in Dallas, Texas, and his largest project, the City of Arts and Sciences, an opera house in his birthplace, Valencia. In Spain, his architectural firm has offices in New York City, Doha, and Zurich. A so-called success story. This is the man. He doesn't look too happy, and I think, despite the appearances, I think he should have actually some guilt on his shoulders. Yes, I begin with this work, which was not mentioned, is a bridge that he built near Santa Lucia train station in Venice. And if you go this year to see the Venice Biennial, because you will arrive at the train station, is unavoidable, almost unavoidable, a little bit, some meters to the right, as you exit the train station, is this bridge by Calatrava, which is very uninspired, and it was criticized by the Italians, and not only by the Italians. Attenzione, pavimento scivoloso. Let's see. Unfortunately, I don't have an image of that bridge, but you can find it on Google Images, bridge, Venice, Santiago Calatrava. I used that bridge a few times, and I have to tell you, is not doing justice to the great city of Venice. This is an early work by him, 1985 in Germany. He is a skillful builder. He is a skillful engineer. He is a skillful architect, but maybe too skillful. I know it sounds paradoxical, what I just said. But I think he's some kind of a virtuoso. Kenneth Frampton published once a text about him called "Look, No Hands," like someone who is using a bicycle and takes the hands off from the handles of the bicycle, just to show off that he can bike without controlling the bike with the hands. I think it was rather appropriate, this title. There is a certain level of showmanship in what he does, in his expressionist technique. But I do have to say that the tower in Malmö that I saw, I admire, and it is remarkable, and it was built many years ago. Well, in 2005, as you can see, the turning torso. I saw also the Milwaukee Art Museum from 2001, but we'll talk about these works. Puente de la Milo Sevilla, 1992. Yes, we could say, look, no hands. I mean, it is a tour de force, but it is, I don't know. I think a great creator is someone who is both an eagle and a snake. In other words, can fly, but can also have, the attachment to the earth that a snake has. I guess what I'm trying to say is someone who is very assertive. That's what I meant by flying, and also modest. I'm not so sure that they are perfectly balanced in his case. Despite his, posturing in, without extremely happy face in some pictures. But I will arrive at some pictures, I think, later. But even here, you see this showy display of honoring the static forces. Yes, you could say in a dynamic way. After all, I do like diagonals, but it is a little bit flamboyant for my taste, what I see here. It's very graphic. It's very graphic and it works, yes. But when you look at the actuality of the bridge is actually not so, it doesn't appear to be so huge. And he occupies a significant portion of the sky with this structure. The diagonal element is almost as long as the length of the bridge itself. What is this in Valencia? Is it the same bridge or I don't. Again and again, we are dealing with anthropos. We are dealing with a powerful human being who is taking off his hands from the, the handles of the bicycle. But maybe a time will come when we'll look a little bit more carefully at these so-called tour de force. Here is the man. I know some people admire very much his watercolors. I think they are terrible. They are the watercolors of a non-artist. They are the watercolors of an engineer. And I'm not saying that an engineer cannot paint. Yes, a good engineer can also paint. And I would be the first to encourage an engineer to paint. But his watercolors are so, so literal, so anyway, we'll arrive, I hope, to some images with his watercolors. City of Arts and Sciences in Valencia. Yes, they are impressive, these buildings, but there is a feeling of emptiness in the end. I mean, all this monumentality, and I don't know. Maybe I'm jealous, maybe I'm envious, but no, it's not that. It's all this. It's very showy. It's a showy architecture, and I think great architecture has elements of what we call a show, but here the showmanship is a little bit, I think, too extravagant, and in a way with an optimism which is not really sustainable. All these. I mean, he probably built the biggest cantilever part, concrete, of course, in the world, in Rio de Janeiro, and we are going to see it. But even here in Valencia, these giant structures, which are, sculptural, and I'm tempted to like them, but I'm not sure I understand some parts. I am not a functionalist, but I don't know. I mean, what is this piece here? And we are going to see another work also with these extravagant things that, yes, they are done impeccably. Yes, they do not fall apart. Yes, the shapes are, seductive, but I don't know. Are they encouraging life actually with their monumentality? I am not sure. I am not sure that his expressionist technique is always, profound. In some cases, maybe it is more than in some other cases. I saw the building in Milwaukee and will arrive there. I don't know. But one thing is for sure. This is concrete. It's done with concrete. It's a lot of concrete. And I look at it and I almost feel like saying art and science had become leisure activities, kind of like it's something that brings them together with entertainment, when art and science shouldn't be like this. I mean, if I look at these buildings and I reflect on what Blaise Pascal said, that all the troubles of humankind are because we cannot sit quietly in a room. But that's what an artist and the scientist need, a room. But here we see this, it's more for me, it's more like the city of entertainment than the city of arts and science. It's a triumphalist architecture. And I think true art and true science are actually should turn their backs on triumphalism. Again, they are seductive, but kind of in an empty way, in a rhetorical way. I mean, I wonder what Vincent van Gogh would have said if he was moving around this building. Do you think Vincent van Gogh would have felt tempted to paint this building instead of sunflowers? I don't think so. I think he would have preferred the sunflowers. There is a certain level of demagogy, in my opinion, in his work. But some works are better, and I hope I have here some examples of those works which I consider to be better. I mean, as I said, I saw the tower he built in Malmö in Sweden. In Sweden, there is a infinitely more, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he wasn't so modest. I'm talking about Sigurd Leverentz. He was an engineer too, but Sigurd Leverentz was a very subtle architect who arrived at a very poetical, way of doing architecture. Something, in my opinion, much deeper than everything Santiago Calatrava did with all his, flamboyance. I don't think, in terms of depth, you can compare Sigurd Leverentz with Santiago Calatrava. But Leverentz is not so well known, while Santiago Calatrava is a star, isn't he? Just here, we just read about concrete. I mean, there is so much concrete, so much cement being used here in Valencia for the vision of an architect. Okay, it's good to have visions. It's good to have visionary projects and visionary buildings. But what is this? If I saw just this image, I would say this is a stadium. This is a stadium. It's not a stadium. It's the city of arts and science. What does this have to do with art and science? They are grandiose, but without that cosmic thinking and feeling of, let's say, Boulez. Now, he didn't make this statue here, but kind of, the statue matches the buildings, the exotism of the other, the exotism of the extravagant, gone ages, that these archaic animals. It's all about the immense boredom of the contemporary man. We need Steven Spielberg. We need exotic animals brought to life from death. We need the structures of Santiago Calatrava, because otherwise we die of boredom. But there are hundreds of thousands of people, hundreds of millions of people who die of hunger. Yes, we have these images. You turn on the TV and what do you see? You see extravagant scenes of unbelievable, so-called realities that make us believe for a short while that our life is adventurous, when in fact we lay on the sofa and we are immensely bored deep down, if not depressed. In a way, this thing that we look at here in the foreground matches the buildings, and the buildings match the. It's SF. It's not real, actually. Yes, they are built impeccably, but I don't know. City of Arts and Sciences, Valencia. Now, the Milwaukee Art Museum, in 2001, I told you I saw this building. I was there. I appreciated much more modest building by, in my opinion, a great architect, Eero Saarinen, who unfortunately died at 50. That is actually very close to this building. In fact, they touch each other, and I hope I have some images with the building by Saarinen as well. Now, this building is supposed to have two wings that open. We see here this wing, and there is another one. Of course, there are two wings they open. I mean, really, do we need buildings with wings that, with an immense consume of energy, are supposed to be lifted, certain times, and why? Why? This is showmanship. This is not true creation. This is showmanship. A true creator is beyond showmanship. Yes, it's interesting. Yes, it's seductive, but it's kind of an empty seductiveness, in my opinion. The bridge is used everywhere. He loves bridges. And look, the building. But this is very rhetorical. The building, you say, is ready to fly. I'm sorry, Mr. Calatrava, but the building is not meant to fly literally. The building is meant to fly metaphorically, the way the Gothic cathedral, built in the Gothic times, in the Middle Ages, was attempting to transcend the limitations imposed on us by gravity, but symbolically and metaphorically, not literally. Not the cathedrals didn't need wings. So this is the illusion of, it's ridiculous actually. Those wings make you think that the building is a bird, but you see clearly that the bird is attached to the bridge with cables. So it's actually an entrapped bird between quotation marks. So it's a contradiction in terms. Why do you conceive those huge wings and the apparatus that makes them, leave the body of the so-called bird when it actually cannot fly? And not only that it cannot fly, but you actually show clearly that the building is attached to the horizontal structure, the bridge, with cables. Is actually imprisoned. The bird is imprisoned. It's showmanship. This is the building by Eero Saarinen that I mentioned. I hope I have images also during the day. It's also a museum, and it's much more modest than this, Calatrava Bonanza. But I appreciate this more, although I'm maybe I have a certain reputation for fighting against cumpătare, against excessive reticence. But in this case, I admire more the reticence in this building, because Saarinen also built the TWA terminal at the JFK airport, which is also with organic, and it's also, like a bird in flight. But there, the symbolism is more acceptable because it is about, terminal, an airport. It's about the flight of the airplanes. Here you could say it's about the flight of imagination of the artist. Okay, I can understand that art is supposed to uplift us, to make us long for the height, for the above, for the distant horizons. But the expenditures, the amount of effort here for something, I would say, explicitly impossible, is to me unconvincing. As unconvincing is this interior, very, very slick and very polished and very whitish, and hopefully, yes, there is art. But without the art, the interior is depressingly, hyper clean, or I don't know how to call it. This is a watercolor by him, I mean, who is there on the left? Adam and Eve, and I don't know. These are affectations, in my opinion. I don't like his watercolors at all, because they are illustrative, they are illustrations, they are not artistic works. They are. Yes, it looks splendid, but look at the bird on the sky. That bird is flying. This one is trapped to the earth, and it's just an illusion and a delusion. These wings are delusional. Fortunately, we have Auguste Rodin with his beautiful sculpture here in the foreground. Finally, a sign of life. Because in my opinion, the building is only mimicking life. Milwaukee Art Center by Saarinen. So now I show you the building that is next door, so to speak, from 1957. So 43, 44 years earlier was built this more modest building, but in my opinion, a superior architecture to the building by Calatrava. This is the building built by a very important architect, Eero Saarinen. His father also was a very important architect, Eliel Saarinen. Okay, it's not so spectacular, this building by Saarinen, but I kind of like it more than the building by Calatrava. And there is a beautiful staircase there. We are going to see it, hopefully. Here you see the building by Calatrava actually arriving at the very edge of the property on which the building by Saarinen was built. In my opinion, again, this is a superior building to the showy building by Calatrava. It's even built, the tectonics are rather cheap, actually. It looks spectacular because of, all that bonanza drama with the wings open, but it's actually built rather in a cheap way. And in a few more images of the Saarinen building. Milwaukee. Yeah, the aesthetics, I mean, the sculpture, the statue doesn't belong to Saarinen, of course. It's a more modest building, yes, but this staircase shows, subtlety of architecturally speaking. And you see from this picture on the right, Calatrava, a little bit above, and on the left, Saarinen. I think Saarinen again is more convincing as an architect in this particular case. And this staircase, I think, is excellent by Saarinen in the courtyard of this museum. Anyway, we're moving forward. Here is actually the TWA terminal on the Kennedy Airport in New York, built by the very author of this building, Eero Saarinen. In a way, you could say I don't know if Calatrava was thinking about this, because he knew he was building, next to the building by Saarinen. There are some echoes of this building into the building by Calatrava. But I think this one is more convincing. Its organicity is it's less forced, and even its tectonics. Of course, Saarinen also used concrete, but this was built, I don't know when, maybe, I don't know in what year he died. He died at 50, Saarinen, unfortunately. Maybe this was built in the 50s, in the 20th century. And I don't know if you know the story. After or around the time he was building this building, he was chosen to preside over the jury for the competition for the opera in Sydney, Australia. And it's a very interesting story that Eero Saarinen, the author of this building in New York, arrived in Sydney one day later. The plane didn't fly on the day it was supposed to fly. It flew to Australia one day later. So he arrived in Sydney to judge, to evaluate the works, the project submitted for the opera in Sydney. And in the meantime, during that day when he was absent, the other members of the jury already banished the project by John Utzon. And Eero Saarinen was curious to see the buildings that were already eliminated. And he discovered the project by John Utzon, and being the chief of the jury, and also being that he was designing this particular building that you look at now, he advocated the cause of John Utzon, and that's why Sydney has now the opera in Sydney. You see, if he didn't want to look at the eliminated works, Sydney would have had another building, not the one that it has now. This is, in my opinion, again, Saarinen is a superior architect, or at least in these works, compared to Calatrava. And he worked here without parametry, without, computer technology or anything. This was all done with the so-called traditional means, but done brilliantly. Anyway, this presentation is not about Saarinen, but, by the way of the museum in Milwaukee, I thought that I should show this work as well. Now, the Athens Olympic Sports Complex by Calatrava, we know already by now his architectural language. We know it. It's, as it was described, expressionist technique, technical expressionism. The expressionism of an engineer, in a way. Yes, he does spectacular structures. Nobody would contest this. Sometimes in almost moving ways, but other times in a very demagogical way, like the transportation hub in New York, which is a disaster. And it's not that I am saying this. Many people in New York think so and wrote against it, and we are going to arrive there. Anyway, this is in Athens. Anyway, this presentation today was supposed to be about concrete. And he does work a lot with concrete, but not only with concrete. This one also is from 2012. Now look at this one. You know, of course, it resembles the one in Valencia. But what is this thing here? You know, and I'm not a functionalist, but really, what is this thing here? You know, yes, it's amazing, no? This thin shell of concrete, reinforced concrete, but what is it made for? What is its? I mean, again, I'm not a functionalist, but why is it there? Just to achieve some so-called spectacular effect? I'm talking about this thing here. What is this? I'm not going to read this text. We still have to see other things, so we move forward. But again, in my opinion, is the assault of man on the world, on nature, on the earth. You know, why did he do it this way? Because yes, we can. This is what human beings say. They even write on T-shirts, on sneakers. Yes, we can. Yes, I can. But is it enough justification for our gestures? We just do things because we can do them. I don't even find his drawings. If I compare this sketch with the sketches of Michelangelo for forts that I showed the other day when we paid homage to Michelangelo, we see two different kind of artists and spirits. Michelangelo was a true artist. This drawing is weak. It's a weak drawing. It doesn't have artistic force. And yes, the structure is spectacular and catchy, but again and again, what is this thing here? Param pam pam. In a way, I didn't invent this word. I didn't even know there is such a word, but somebody used it to describe his architecture. Param pam pam, with exclamation marks. Param pam pam. That is an empty triumphalism. It is just this, param pam pam. Yes, it's incredible. I mean, look at this thin shell of concrete. But it is a param pam pam architecture. It would have been much better without this part, which is even threatening. And look, of course, we talked about showmanship, right? Come on, this is ridiculous. I mean, this man is posing here as his blue collar worker, making concrete, right? It's showmanship. This is cheap showmanship. You know, he's no Brunelleschi, you know, or Antoni Gaudi living in Sagrada Familia. He's a spoiled, highly successful architect, immensely rich, who is only posing here, you know, like, he's contributing physically to the erection of his big ego. But it's pathetic, really. This was done just for the camera, and I'm sure afterwards, very quickly, he changed his attire and, dressed impeccably in who knows what. I don't want to give the impression that I am envious, because I'm not, but I just don't think that a serious architect or artist would do this sort of thing. This is done for the cameras. Okay, he made us smile a little bit. For that, we are grateful to him. But we are not grateful to him for this monstrous thing he did here. No, this is an empty gesture, and maybe enough reason to reconsider him. Anyway, that's what I think. The Tenerife Auditorium. Communications tower in Barcelona. This also I remember. I saw this one is also this kind of hands off the bike. Yes, he has some ability to create a little bit of drama out of nowhere and for no reason. Like this thing. This thing is standing on this little point, and it gives you the impression that. Is defying gravity and so on. But it's very graphic. You could say, come on, it's the triumph of the human spirit, right? The triumph of the human spirit for who knows what company, Telefonica. Capitalism at its most sublime. It's just him and the sun or the moon or some distant stars. But he's seductive. Many people are seduced because, he's riding the bicycle without using his hands on the arms of the bicycle. Here we have, the bottom. Unfortunately, these people, I hate the way they put their names, the authorship, Dreamtime, Dreamstime, Dreamstime. In a way, that's what it is about, Dreamstime. But I think Antoni Gaudi was more than just this empty, showy Dreamstime. But I like this picture. I don't know what it is for. I mean, this is not Calatrava. I don't know why I included it in the presentation. In its modesty, it's much more poetical and meaningful to me than the adventures in engineering of Calatrava. But this building, as I said, I did like. I saw it there and I admired it. This turning torso, as he called it, and he built it, many years before. Now it's very common to have twisting towers, but he did it before the year 2000s. And yes, here the engineering is impeccable, and I think this tower is very convincing. Whatever I said before, please, for a while, forget what I said. This building I like. But then I liked it because I was also very impressed by the city of the future that Malmö built around this tower. I was so impressed that me coming from Chicago or New York, I even forgot, but I felt as a provincial, primitive man arriving in Malmö in Sweden. I felt that they were in advance of us, meaning by us, people coming from the United States, some good tens of years, like 20, 30, 40 years, if you can say something like this. Very advanced, the city of the future in Malmö. These Swedes are very sophisticated, and I was very impressed by the tower, but not only by the tower, the buildings they built around this tower, and the people, I don't know, there was a level of sophistication there that made me feel as if I came from a so-called third world country, when in fact I came from the United States. Yes, I felt that they were much more sophisticated than the society I came from. And I do like this tower. Bravo for it, Monsieur Calatrava. Not everything you do is bad. And yes, I'm talking about this housing complex, which was not built by Calatrava. I don't know who built them, but it is a portion of Malmö called the city of the future. At least that's how it was called when I was there before the year 2000. And this is the plan of the building. No, definitely he did a good job in Malmö. Oh, of course, he is trying hard to ruin, the reason for the applauses. We didn't need this literal, explanation. That the torso is informing the building. I don't know. I mean, there are so many twisted buildings, towers like this these days, and I'm sure they were not inspired by the so-called, torso that he refers to. But it's a good building, and wherever you photograph it from, it looks good. Calatrava in Sweden. Of course, this is not built for proletarians, but hello, Mr. Calatrava. You did a good job here. Don't be sad. We are proud of you, Monsieur Calatrava. We really are. For this work, not for others. Certainly not for what you did in New York. You probably hate New York. He also built an Orthodox church there, close to the former World Trade Center. That building is also not good. Now, let's read here. Aside from being the 2014 winner of the Biggest Loser, bungled Chicago developments, Calatrava is known for suing and being sued, going over budget and being made fun of by hackish New York food critics. Oh, and the all-white otherworldliness of his designs. I didn't write this text. I found it on the web. So aside from being the 2014 winner of the Biggest Loser bungled Chicago development, he proposed a huge tower there, which was not realized. Calatrava is known for suing and being sued. So, a lot of things happen in the, palaces of justice of this world, going over budget and being made fun of by hackish New York food critics. Oh, and the all-white otherworldliness of his designs. This is probably reference to what he built in New York City. But first, let's see this tower he proposed for Chicago. And I'm happy actually it was not built, because it would not have really added anything to the city of Chicago. I'm sure Chicago was very sad that it was not built. Now the Infinity Tower in Dubai, twisted architecture again and again. We already saw what he did in Malmö. We see now what he did in Dubai, Infinity Tower. This chairman, right, with the Spanish-Swiss architect Santiago Calatrava. Here they are, and this tower is. I hope it will not be built in the name of sustainability. Oh my God, my God! What would these Arabs do without the oil? What would they do without that oil? But that oil at one point will end. But until then, let's go to God himself, all the way up. Must be good to have money. And look at it. poor Frank Lloyd Wright, he proposed a 1 mile tall building, and he was thought of being a madman, but at a different age than Calatrava. Taller and taller, and of course, if he builds it, another architect will come and will make one twice the size, the height of this one. Why? Because there is gas. Is this the triumph of the human spirit? I don't know. I'm not so sure. But yes, it is amazing. I mean, look at its height. Now, it's very possible that underneath this splendid tower, there is a vertical city filled with cars. This man here is the ruler of Abu Dhabi, and he's even, or Dubai, one of the two. He even writes poems, and he's an interesting man, actually. Unbearably rich, of course. So, what do we see here? Well, some of the towers built by humankind, and the one by, and this is actually a perfectly legitimate self-portrait of Calatrava. Not only that it is so tall, but look at the base. I mean, compared to all the other skyscrapers, this man is covered a huge amount of earth at the bottom in order to, and I'm not sure he needed actually such an extravagant footprint for this building. Giving a talk. What surprises me also is how unromantically he is dressed. I mean, for a man who does watercolors and is an artist, is dressed like a businessman. You know, at least Frank Lloyd Wright was dressing very romantically, and even Le Corbusier. But this man, actually, the way he is dressed matches his watercolors, which are not the watercolors of an artist. That's why I didn't say artist, I said artiste, because in English there is a difference between the two. Now, Calatrava in New York. Here we arrive at his greatest calamity until now. Bigger than the bridge in Venice and bigger than other things. The WTC transportation hub, the World Trade Center transportation hub, which he completed after the Twin Towers fell to the ground. Here is during the construction. And this is not a cathedral. This is a transportation hub, a view of the interior. Okay, maybe for a short while you would be tempted to say, wow, a kind of a whitish wow. But I don't know. It's, what did he want to say with this giant space? You know, it's a transportation hub, for God's sake. You take the subway from there, okay? You take the subway from there. You are not praying there. You are not in the Chartres Cathedral. You are in a transportation hub, and look how it looks from the outside. I read that actually children are scared of these things. Again, wings. But look at these spikes. They're immense. I mean, look at the car and look at these spikes on both sides. This is, I would say, rather, if I neglect the fact that it's a whitish white building, it's rather, it's not an expression of love. I almost feel like saying it's an expression of hate, because this aggressive so-called architectural bird, I read that children are scared of those spikes, and we are going to read some remarks about it from New Yorkers. Now, what is the symbolism of these static wings? Why did he make them? I mean, in the case of Saarinen at JFK airport, you say, okay, it's an airport, right? You take the plane and you fly. But here you take the subway, you go underground, and you take a subway which goes underneath the earth and is certainly not flying. And it's not an art museum to say, okay, you are flying through imagination, through towards some distant horizon. yes, it's an amazing effort. You can imagine the budget for this. That's why he sued and he sues. I mean, we are talking about tens, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars. For what? For a subway station? Now the Grand Central, terminal in New York, where you take the train and so on, has a certain monumentality, but nothing like this. I don't know why I don't trust you, Monsieur Calatrava. I really don't. I like your tower in Malmö, but I don't like what I see in this picture. I really don't. I'm sorry. And I didn't like that posing of you making concrete, like a blue collar worker, really. Now, New York's $4 billion shrine to government waste and idiocy. That's how it was described, this project built by this guru architect, Santiago Calatrava. 4 billion. That is, let me see, I don't even know if I can count well. 4,000, wait a minute, a billion is 1,000 millions? I think so. I mean, I'm not accustomed to count in this. In Romanian, it's a milliard, 4 of them. So somebody, I think, with enough justification, wrote a shrine to government waste and idiocy. And let's read a little bit about it, because I think New Yorkers knew what they said. What they said. To say that Santiago Calatrava, international star architect and grand purveyor of winged white things, is not exactly a media darling would be an understatement akin to architecture in China is fairly creative, or Daniel Lipskin is not quite the most beloved architect around. In March, for example, the New York Times said Calatrava's World Trade Center Transit Hub, a structural bird in flight, Brâncuș did some birds in flight, but very different from Calatrava's work, set to wrap construction at the end of 2014, had clunky fixtures and some rough workmanship that made it look cheap, like I mentioned, with the museum in Milwaukee. Of course, before that, the Spanish city of Valencia sued the architect because his grossly over budget opera house was kind of falling apart. And now the New York Post Steve Cuozzo, a critic that often sticks to restaurant reviews, has unleashed the harshest, most outlandish critique of them all. Here comes the Calatrasaurus. Not the dinosaurs, but the Calatrasaurus. It begins and it doesn't mellow out from there. Below, a visual tour of the most insane lines from the critique. Let's continue to read what this man wrote. A self-indulgent, or I don't know, no, I only have this from his text, but I have a few fragments from other, words related to this building. A self-indulgent monstrosity. Like plastic mutant terrors of 1950s science fiction movies, somebody wrote, like plastic mutant terrors of 1950s. What is written here? Not everyday ugly, like a tacky brown tie or dress, but lol ugly. These are the perceptions, the words of New Yorkers. They hate it, and it was built. It was built with insane amounts of money. Why? Because people love showmanship. May frighten small children. Somebody wrote, and I read the more text like this, or the 4 billion shrine to government waste and idiocy. That we already know and already read. Bureaucracy fed vainglory. And indeed, vainglory it is. Look at me, I'm Calatrava, somebody wrote. I don't think all these people were, envious or jealous. No, no, it's not this. It's really, it's not a great architecture. It's a great will to impress, maybe by an insecure man, somebody that is not my arrow, that red arrow. I found it like this on the web. What are those spikes? Can you imagine how much steel went into those useless spikes, which are huge, huge? And here he is. I mean, really, this is pathetic. I mean, totally pathetic. This man dressed with a gray suit, with tie, with white shirt, doing his watercolors while the media people are photographing him and videoing him. I mean, this is really, it's actually totally ridiculous. He's not an artist, he's not a painter. He does have a huge ego, yes, but was it necessary for him to paint his own work? I mean, this kind of narcissism is, it should be a psychoanalytical case study. You know, it's grotesque, actually. I mean, I can only imagine him, you know, arriving with a limousine at the site of this, shrine to idiocy and government waste, you know, dressed, for a business meeting with his watercolors, you know, in a bag or something, and then it's just, it's pathetic. I like this, you know, I mean, during the construction, it's real life, big effort, agitating the earth, Mother Earth, raping Mother Earth in order for the inflated ego of the watercolorist in a gray suit to have another splendid, presence on his CV. And here they are. On the left, the mayor of New York, Bloomberg, the senator, the governor of the state of New York, and here is Daniel Lipskind, all applauding, all exciting, all excited. And then the modest watercolor is here, amazed himself. I'm sure he's all wet, looking at the masterpiece that, this was the rendering, of course, before it was built, and everybody was applauding. But you read the reactions of the New Yorkers. Garde d'Oriente, Lisbon. Here there are some qualities, I would say, where, because he fragmented the structure, and there's some echoes from the Middle Ages. This work is, in my opinion, better. I mean, it's still, a large constructive effort, but I think it's a little bit more balanced than what we saw earlier in New York City. And yes, the reference to, the Gothic cathedral, although here the function is very different, makes it more, appealing or charming. But the level of rhetoric is still high here. Gare de Lyon, the signature work by Calatrava. Whatever he has to, I didn't yet see a small house built by Calatrava. I would be very curious to see one. Maybe he cannot build small things. He has to build, giant things. I can look at his watercolors. Really, they made me hate art. No, it's not true, but that's not art, I think. Liège, another giant thing, you know. If you look at this picture, you could have said this is a stadium. It's another station of some sort, you know. But it's very inflated and it's probably impressive when you are there, yes. I mean, I have to turn against myself. Maybe if I was there, I would love it. I don't know. I don't know. Calatrava reveals 1 billion scheme for London's Greenwich Peninsula. Another billion. 1,000 millions, I think is a billion, yes. Anthropos and anthropos again. You know, the triumph of man over the world, forgetting that he is himself part of that world. It's typical bridge, and then and now I think this is the last work I show, which shows the most, you know, outlandish, or I don't know how to call it. I have no words. An incredible cantilevered work. I think it's 75, 78 meters long. It's a museum, and here it is, all for nothing, because all these things, you know, that is apparently, you know, running towards the, you know, the infinite, towards the absolute, towards what Antoine de Saint-Exupéry was longing for at the end of the sea. In fact, it's again another gesture of megalomania, an empty gesture of megalomania. Is a triumphalist. I mean, it's one thing to say that art is a longing for the impossible, for the absolute, for the infinite, you name it. And it's another to spend huge amounts of money and huge amounts of concrete and huge amounts of steel in order to be this useless thing. Yes, it's monumental. Yes, it's a monument, but it's a monument to maybe to that idiocy that someone criticized in New York City, you know, and waste. It's about waste, and then we are confronted with all kinds of problems. But if there are many Calatravas in the world, and there are in various you know, ways, we shouldn't be surprised that we only have 3 seasons lately. You know, winter is gone. Is it splendid? It is in a rather empty way. You know, it's if I see a, you know, a prehistoric animal around it, I would say yes, they belong to each other. You know, this it's a future I don't look up to, or it's but who knows, maybe visiting it, being there, maybe the impression, the perception could be different, because I remember when I saw pictures with the Fondation Louis Vuitton in Paris, I was not exalted, but when I arrived there and I entered the building, especially at the top of the building, I had different perceptions and different thoughts. So please forgive me if I, you know, made assessments without actually seeing some of these buildings myself, except through pictures, as you do now. Here also you see this, the man is obsessed by these moving wings, you know, which you understand they require immense amounts of energy in order to lift that so-called wing, that roofing. And what do we see here? We see the giant ships, you know, all filled with tourists. And then we complain that the sea levels are going up and the icebergs are melting. But what do we see here? The triumphalism of a human being who refuses to acknowledge the fact that more modesty is needed in the world. It's still ravishing the world in the name of what? In the name of a triumphalist attitude vis-a-vis nature, vis-a-vis the earth, vis-a-vis even our trembling soul, because the buildings by Calatrava do not actually convey great self-knowledge, I would say. It's some kind of architectonic prehistoric animal, but built in the present and with an eye for the future. Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And I like this picture. I don't like the fact that Getty Images is displaying the, you know, its stamp. But when I saw this picture, I appreciate this young man who is jumping into the water, because the spontaneity of his gesture, and then, you know, it's a simple gesture that brings some life that the building behind it, in my opinion, doesn't have. This child is more alive than the building, or this young man. Maybe he's not a child, I don't see very well, but you see it. Maybe I was too harsh with the Calatrava, but some of the harshest words were not mine, were, you know, almost screamed by those frustrated New Yorkers. Concrete, 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 steel, reinforced concrete, you know, for what in the end? For an empty show, and then a solitary human being, very alone, because in the vicinity of this giant architectural structure, the human being can only feel alone.